pretty interesting chapter overall, I think. Despite the fact that, of course, things are not going off, or rather kickstarting good for Justin in this chapter, I think he will be able to bounce back after a while. And with the revelations or possible revelations of who Sakigake is, there is at least some hope that, of course, Justin will be able to pull out the win, because it seems as though Sakigake isn't actually, let's say, a worm clone, or let's say Nico number 3 somehow de-aging into something, any shenanigans like that. It doesn't seem to be the case for Sakigake here. However, I will talk about what I think Sakigake is doing in the tournament, because there are a few possible reasons, especially if he's affiliated with the gang warfare sort of happening in Japan. Because that would mean, and of course this is a little bit of a spoiler to what my thoughts are, but I will provide evidence for it later, Sakigake might actually be trying to hunt down the worm himself. But without further ado, let's of course get into the chapter itself, which is called In Fast Forward, and we get to see why pretty soon actually. Starting off with, of course, Justin and Sakigake staring each other down, with Sakigake calling Justin cute and Justin saying to shove it up Sakigake's own ass. This was a pretty hilarious interaction between the two, because Justin is definitely talking a lot more trash than Sakigake is, even though you can kind of tell Sakigake is not taking Justin too seriously here. But then we get introduced to the referee himself, who starts off the match with both fighters taking their stances, and it seems as though it's a little bit tense at first, waiting for either Justin or Sakigake to make the first move, and it seems as though Justin is the one that makes the first move, but is intercepted by Sakigake, landing a direct punch in the face that was incredibly fast, actually, so fast that even Yamashita is like, whoa, that was pretty fast, considering the distance, of course, Sakigake had actually traveled in order to hit Justin. And at this point, of course, Justin is noting to the speed that, whoa, Sakigake is actually pretty fast. It seems like he's moving in fast forward. And this does make me wonder, does Sakigake have, like, let's say, pre-initiative or being able to sense the intent of Justin? However, I think the evidence points to Sakigake not being able to do that, because he seems to wait until Justin himself moves, whereas if you're using pre-initiative, you typically can intercept your opponent before they even move, because you know what they're gonna do probably. And so Justin goes for another attempt at basically whatever he was trying to do. It seems like he was going to go for a tackle to pin Sakigake down, but as he tries to actually just start the move itself, Sakigake intercepts again with another hit to the face before Justin can actually do any of his own moves here. We then get to see Sakigake actually take a karate stance, and this sort of confirms that Sakigake is using karate, or at least a school of karate, which will be elaborated on a little bit later in the chapter, because the types of stances that Sakigake is taking are not, at least at first glance, they don't look like karate stances. But Justin gives Sakigake his props, saying, yep, that is pretty cool. Whatever he's trying to do, whatever he is doing, Justin is impressed by it. We then get some thoughts from Sakigake himself, noting to how tough Justin is, because he's taken 2 of his jabs directly to the face clean, and Justin has been able to shrug them off. We then of course go over to Carlos, who's of course noting that Justin isn't using a form of traditional karate, with Gao Lang joining him to discuss Sakigake, at least how Carlos would deal with Sakigake, since it seems as though Gao Lang is looking for advice when it comes to him. Now what's interesting about this is that it seems as though Gao Lang is noting that maybe Sakigake is going to be a bit more tougher to deal with than Justin, because he seems to specialize in speed to a certain extent, but it's not the same as like striking. Because so far from what we've seen, he's basically been taking or launching his jabs from like mid-range, and they have been incredibly fast. And so Gao Lang is consulting Carlos with this and confirms that he actually thinks that, of course, Carlos is a better boxer than him. So he would want to actually hear what Carlos has to say by that. And Carlos replies that he would probably just, of course, do something that's a bit more simple, considering that it was a boxing match. He would have to check Sakigake with his own jabs as well, sort of have a jabbing competition, and then I'm guessing he would be able to know what the best path forward from then on would be. But Carlos notes to something very specific here. He says that it seems as though whatever Sakigake is doing here, he doesn't seem to be able to rapid fire those fast jabs in the same way, say, Gao Lang can. And so even though it seems like he is pretty good in terms of speed and how he actually launches those jabs from a distance, there will be a considerable amount of time between those jabs. But we then of course cut over back into the fight, and we then see Justin take a different stance now, and it seems like he's a further distance away from Justin than he was with the previous two jabs. And so he shifts his stance and launches another jab, again landing another clean hit on Justin, with of course Jerry noting to like, oh my god, his range is actually, he doesn't just launch his jabs from mid-range, he can launch his jabs that are fairly fast from long range as well. With Kim actually noting to how ridiculous that is, that he can actually launch such a fast jab from 3 meters away from Justin, with Okubo noting to that being the reason why he probably switched up his stance, because of course he was working with a different range. But Sakigake is not done yet. While Justin is of course getting pushed back from the previous jab and trying to recover as much as possible, Sakigake does another follow-up jab and lands another clean hit on Justin here. And Justin, he feels the third one, and it seems like Sakigake had definitely charged up that other hit. And it's a shame because Justin hasn't done anything in the fight so far. And I do wonder if, of course, at this point, is the whole jab thing Sakigake's, let's say, gimmick at this point? Or can he do more than just that? That'll be a bit more interesting to actually know and see here. Because these are technically jabs, so they're meant to be fast. They're not meant to do that much damage. But Sakigake, he's putting in pretty good damage, it seems. But we cut over to what seems to be the police department. And it seems like there's a gathering of a certain, of course, police division, and that is the organized crime division of the police. And they're actually talking about a joint investigation that they've been having with, of course, another group of the police that are called the Achi police, that uncovered a link between a certain gang and a karate dojo, specifically the karate dojo that, of course, training what seems to be gang affiliate people. With it being noted that 70% of the people that go to this dojo that the police are investigating are members of what are known as the Boyu group, and 30% are actually people that are, of course, affiliated with the Boyu group. And the police are noting to this because it seems as though the Boyu group are preparing for some sort of war that's happening fairly soon, because they're training up so many members here. And they note that they have been having problems with another family that's called the Niwa family of some sort. Again, this seems to be a lot of gang conflict that hasn't been too relevant in the story of Kengan Omega forever, actually. I even looked back to the Anti-Worm Alliance just to see if there were any of these gang members that were present in the Anti-Worm Alliance that are back here, and no, that doesn't seem to be the case. But the reason why this karate dojo and of course the Boyu family is quite important is because it leads up to a single individual, and that is of course Sakigake, who is the director of this dojo, but also seemingly a child of the Dawn of the Boyu group. once we have this revelation, it seems as though everyone is dismissed, and we have a conversation between other police investigators that are discussing whether or not this is a coincidence, since they know Sakigake is fighting in the Real Champions tournament. They seem to be aware of what's going on, but they're wondering what Sakigake is doing with the Kengan Association. What is going on? Why is he even there? That is still a mystery. Which brings me to my guess, because we are at the latter half of this chapter. I think we only have like 1 page left. The reason why I think Sakigake is here is probably, if we're going to tie this back to the worm somehow. And I believe that this does tie back to the worm somehow. We do know that the worm used to basically be terrorists everywhere, basically. My guess is that he's probably looking for some of those worm members that might be behind the current feud that they're having with the other, let's say, gang families out there. That, or he's trying to get more power for the Boyo group to use. So getting into the Kengan Association gives them access to a lot more assets and money, and so they'll probably have a leg up when it comes to the upcoming war with other gang members. That's the boring answer. That's the most logical one though. But if we're assuming the worm is involved somewhere, that's where I think they would be involved. They caused chaos, and Sakigake is trying to solve that chaos by having them, of course, get beat up. It doesn't quite make sense, and I am grasping at straws here, but that is what I think. That's a bit more of a crackpot theory, but hey. We then, of course, cut over back to Hiraku, who is taking a different stance this time around, and we have no idea what Sakigake is going to do next, or whether or not Justin will get to do anything until the next chapter. Overall, it seems as though the mystery of Sakigake is probably going to be the biggest pusher for this fight. I do know that, of course, most of the hype surrounding Sakigake is going to deflate after this chapter, but at least the fight seems to be more or less, let's say, interesting. So yeah, that's it. Don't forget to like and sub, and until next time, take it easy.